Welcome to Binge-Worthy, writing a compelling story,
where we take a look at some of your favorite stories and we discuss what tricks, tips, and techniques make them bingeable.
I'm Jonathan. I'm a published short story author and screenwriter who really enjoys writing TV pilots, several of which are currently under consideration by production companies. And I love telling stories.
And I'm Jackie. I'm a story consultant and sensitivity reader for Jonathan's scripts as well as for other writers. And I love talking about stories and how they can help create inclusive spaces for others.
And we started Binge-Worthy because as I looked for ways of improving my craft, I noticed that many of the free resources out there on TV writing happen to discuss the same 2 or 3 episodes, and I wanted to create an alternative, one where we discuss episodes from what many people consider to be some of the greatest TV shows of all time.
We're committed to amplifying more than just the same traditional voices, so we'll be looking at a variety of TV shows, some of which you know and love,
and others you might not, but should consider checking out.
Since this is our first season, we thought that we should dedicate this entire season to discussing pilot episodes.
The first episode that sells a TV series and makes the audience want to watch more.
Each of our podcast episodes this season will cover a different element that a TV pilot could use to become a successful bingeable story.
Now, not all TV pilots need all of the things we'll be discussing this season, and some elements are significantly more important than others.
But having many of these elements present at once will definitely help to elevate any story to a higher level of writing.
Now that you know what makes us binge-worthy, let's talk about what makes a pilot binge-worthy. And last week, we discussed the importance of an opening scene. And in that episode, we talked about how layering different unexpected things could help make an interesting opening scene. But there's another element that we didn't talk about last week that we will be talking about this week, which is characterization and the importance of character.
For characterization, it's both important to be able to visually show who is in the scene, who we should be caring about as the audience, and also giving us little hints about what their motivations might be. Today we'll be discussing the opening scene from Psych.
Psych is an hour-long mystery comedy series that ran for 8 seasons. It's also generated 3 spin-off movies with more in production. It was created by Steve Franks, and I believe the pilot was also written by Steve Franks as well.
So what we'll do now is we'll do a dramatic reading of the opening scene from the pilot of Psych,
which we'll be doing through fair use for the purposes of educating our audience.
And every time something stands out to one of us, we'll stop the reading and talk about it.
We'll focus on what makes the storytelling stand out as excellent, and sometimes we might discuss the differences between what's written in the pilot and what got filmed.
And then when we're done, we'll recap our takeaways.
Also, as a quick disclaimer, even though Jackie and I are big fans of Psych, we're not going to remember every single detail, but we'll just be talking about the first couple of minutes of the pilot episode and what makes it compelling.
And with that out of the way, let's get right into it.
All right, real quick, just to help our audience keep track of who's doing what, I will take the role of the narrator. I'll also do Henry, which is Sean's dad. Jackie, if you could do young Sean and any of the female roles, and then when we get to the second half of the teaser, I'll do grown Sean, and yeah, we'll take it from there.
Sounds good.
Psych, pilot, written by Steve Franks. Teaser. Interior diner day, circa 1980s. Henry Spencer, gruff, stern off-duty cop still in uniform, sits in a booth with his 11-year-old son, Sean, a sharp but playful kid. Did you do your homework?
Huh?
Finish those beets?
Yep. Can I have fudge cake?
Henry looks at his son's plate, sufficiently clean. He considers. Close your eyes.
Dad.
Now. The boy closes his eyes, clenches his left hand into a ball, and rubs it across his forehead. A kid ready to concentrate. Henry begins. Which letter is out in the exit sign?
The X.
What's the color of the vinyl?
What's vinyl?
The stuff our seats are covered in.
Yellow.
Manager's name?
Who?
Also, real quick, I'll stop right there just to do comment. So this is actually different from the pilot. This is a very small detail, but what got filmed was he asked what the colors of the seat were. Young Sean said purple, then Henry actually corrected them and said maroon but close enough, and then they moved on. And so there are actually two reasons why that could have happened. One is like they got to the filming location and they didn't have yellow seats. But also it's interesting that in the filmed version of the pilot, Henry actually finds an example that's close enough and gives him just like this tiniest sliver of mercy. So I think that's interesting from like the dad's point of view, where it's like he's tough, but he's like, all right, that's close enough.
It's also funny because one of the ways that I read that detail was like, wow, he's very precise. He's going to tell him that it's like this exact shade color, like maroon, which is not like a common one that you would usually say.
Yeah, that's true.
So I thought it was...
That's probably how it was supposed to be taken.
No, I think it could be doing a lot of things like at the same time, because it's also a little bit like, I don't know, like tit for tat sort of thing. But,
oh, yeah.
But also, I think you're right that it does show him to be fair. Like he's very precise, but he's not going to be like a dick about it. So, no. Or he tries to be like not as dickish as he's probably like, able of being. But the other thing that stood out to me was unless I read it or interpreted it differently, was the actual gesture that young Sean does to concentrate.
True.
Because in the one that was filmed, not only is he doing a gesture to concentrate, but ends up being like a preview of the gesture that like the character will do for the rest of the show, where like he puts like his fingertips to his temples on both sides. And
yeah, we should actually take a minute and talk about that, because this is perhaps the most important part of the characterization. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Psych is essentially a Sherlock Holmes-esque sort of situation where someone is able to look at a situation and look at the tiny details and gather a lot of information and put it together in a way that makes them appear like they are psychic. And it takes it to a comedic level where, for reasons that the pilot does get into, but not within the first bit that we're going to be reading, Sean Spencer eventually convinces the police department that he is a psychic because his detective skills are so sharp. It's actually easier to convince them that he's psychic than it is for them to believe that he's like a genuinely good detective. And he lies to them to get out of a little bit of trouble, and that's what sets this whole fake psychic detective show into motion. It's a really wonderful plot. But also, another thing that we have to talk about is it's actually not in the pilot that we actually get to see like little clips of what Sean sees in a very interesting way. For instance, when Henry says which letter is out in the exit sign, and then young Sean says the X, it doesn't say it in the screenplay, but like in the show, it'll actually show like it'll cut to like a muted version of the exit sign, and then there's like a very brief flash around the X that highlights that, oh, the X is what we need to pay attention to. And so everything that he sees, like every little detail that he sees, we also get to see.
Yeah, I was also going to say this is maybe a broader characterization for the show as a whole, but when you were describing, I hadn't thought of it this way, but when you were describing that it's easier for the police department to believe that he's a psychic versus, I don't know, a very gifted detective, I think to me that adds comedy too, because it's just like much easier for them to think about that than they're not good enough as like detectives or cops. It's just like a different, level of like silliness.
Yeah, that was awesome. So as we continue reading, this is Sean's backstory as a kid and like how he developed these skills. And this sort of sets up like the skill that he is going to be using later. And I guess while we're talking about characterization, giving your character a really unique skill is one very important way of writing a memorable character. And not only giving them a skill, but also showing how it works and showing them using it. And this scene masterfully shows that off. And it also shows like how he got it, because this is him as a kid. This is a flashback.
Yeah. I would also say it makes me think of how it also explains how that person fits into their setting, because it does somewhat lead to a role and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit on a really, really good thing there. Okay. Manager's name?
Who?
She had a name tag, standing at the front when we walked in.
Marie, can I have the cake?
How many hats?
Come on, Dad.
You want the cake? How many hats in the room?
Does a beanie count?
What do you think?
3.
You didn't describe them.
That's not fair.
Your time's almost up.
One has a flower, the one the lady's wearing. One has a picture of some kind of lion on the weird guy with the crooked tooth. The last one is on the chef.
What about the beanie?
A beanie is a cap, not a hat.
All right, open them. The waitress is standing there. She smiles, impressed. Henry gives no expression.
That's amazing.
Sean smiles up at her. It's adequate. Get him the cake. She jots down on their bill, still smiling at the boy.
I guess I know what you're going to be when you grow up. Oh, I'm never going to grow up, ma'am.
I'd like to talk about something there. So another thing about characters is like what they want and versus what they need. And so characters' goals and how they, like what you were saying about how they fit into the world. And the dialogue is like a little bit on the nose here, but I think it's very effective at saying, oh, what is the main conflict that Sean is going to face even as an adult? And so it was just stated here, I'm never going to grow up, because that's not stated in this part of the pilot, but you can read between the lines and see that Sean believes that growing up means becoming like his father, and he doesn't want to do that. And it also sets up this thing where the waitress says, I know what you're going to be when you grow up. And we won't see it in the pilot, or the part of the pilot that we're reading, but Sean does not grow up to become a police officer. The closest he comes is doing work for them as this fake psychic character, which the pilot does get into, but we're only reading the opening bits here.
Yeah, I also think it helped characterize not only like Henry and a young Sean, but also foreshadow what their relationship is going to be as well. Because even though some of the things the waitress is saying are a little bit on the nose, I think it serves as like contrast to the father, right? Where he's like, just, it's barely adequate. Like he'll take it, but he's not impressed sort of thing. And so, just having that where he's expecting a lot from him, but then he doesn't really give him a whole lot of credit. And maybe that's about his parenting, or it makes me wonder like, oh, he's kind of the parent that pushes you, but if he gives you too much credit, maybe it's going to make you soft or something like that. So it tells me, I think, a little bit, at least going on certain tropes about Henry. And here, even though like some of the dialogue, especially with the waitress, is on the nose, I do feel like you can get away with it because of the setting. Like they're in a diner, and I think the tropes or stereotypes of the diner is like people are like overly friendly, and it's like your local place. So even something like that, they got away with.
Yeah, I will say that, like, even though I said, oh, this is on the nose, I don't think that it is dialogue that stands out as something that no one would ever say.
Sure, yeah.
This doesn't feel forced, and I think that's why it works. And so even though it very plainly said, I guess what I mean when I say on the nose is it's very plainly stating what themes the audience needs to be looking out for.
Gotcha.
And it's not necessarily doing it in a bad way.
Okay.
Yeah. How about we take it from I'm never going to grow up, and then we'll go right into the next scene, because like we're supposed to have that in mind as we're progressing. So,
oh, I'm never going to grow up, ma'am.
Dissolve 2. Interior, Sean Spencer's apartment. Night. The present. The door slams open, and in falls Sean Spencer, now stylishly stubbled, carefree and drifting somewhere in his 30s. He is currently locked in a torrid embrace with a passionate blonde, still in her lobster shack uniform. Without coming up for air or taking her eyes off him.
Nice place.
Thanks. They tumble into the room and onto the couch. She pulls back, bites her lips seductively, and removes her hairnet. Let's stop right there real quick. So even though, like, elements of this did get filmed in the pilot, the writing here comes across as like a little bit more scandalous than what actually got filmed. Just wanted to state that for the record. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
I guess so. I think like the actual film scene is like quite spicy. I think it also probably depends on the time.
It depends on maybe spicy by 2006
Yeah, I
standards.
think that's what I was thinking. Like, depends on when it's filmed and stuff like that. But yeah, I think definitely just reading it is different because you could be like the person could be imagining it like different kinds of ways, not even coming up for air. Like, that's not something that you would necessarily, or maybe you would when you're watching it, think about. But yeah, that is interesting.
I will also state that when Psych premiered, it was a couple of years after Monk premiered on the same channel. Back when people had
I didn't realize that.
Back when people had TV channels where it's, oh, this is what you're going to be watching if it's like this time at night. And Monk was a similar sort of Sherlock Holmes thing, but like his quirk was like he had obsessive compulsive disorder, which allowed him to notice that different details were off. And I believe that part of the calculation in having a scene like the one we're reading happen in Psych is, oh, this person is very different from the other detective show that's on the same channel. Because Monk, great show, like for the most part, but like his obsessive compulsive disorder didn't allow him to get into romantic flings such as this. And so it shows like a completely different take on the Sherlock Holmes trope.
Yeah.
That's a personal theory as to maybe why this worked a little bit better, because they were trying to show the difference between another product that was on the market, so to speak.
Yeah, especially if it's on their same channel. Yeah, I do think that makes a lot of sense. Also, you probably already have fans that are into these like mystery type of procedural kind of shows. But yeah, I guess I won't say too much, not going onto a tangent, but I think I wanted to highlight what you mentioned about, for the most part, like your phrasing about the show, because I think we both kind of have thoughts about some of the representation of sensitive issues. But
yeah, I do have OCD in real life. Some of the things that that Monk showed were accurate. Some might have been like a little bit, they could use a little bit of help, and I'm not the only person who said that, but for the most part, I do enjoy the show Monk, and I don't really have any strong complaints about it. Like I loved the show when it came out.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't end up watching it because I didn't watch that channel a whole lot. But yeah, all of that to say that we mention it in some of our copy, but one of the reasons we do this is not to put down any shows, but just to help folks hopefully with their writing so we can help diversity of like different representation and things like that out there, just so there aren't like certain stereotyped ones from like early 2000s or something like that.
Yeah. Cool. And with that, we have the blonde biting her lip and seductively removing her hairnet.
Oh, can I mention one more thing?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Just how you mentioned that this is supposed to be confirming that last, or the continuation of that last line, oh, I'm never going to grow up. I think it's interesting that being playful, or I don't know, sexually excited or something, is being seen as, oh, I'm never going to grow up because I'm going to remain playful. I think that's both an interesting connection, but also something that does carry through.
Yeah, good point. So we have the blonde biting her lip and seductively removing her hairnet.
I knew you were going to be my best table.
They start kissing again and roll on top of the remote, turning the TV on. Sean reaches for the remote to turn the TV off, but as he does, his eyes catch a local news report on a burgled electronics superstore. Quick shots inside the crime scene.
The series of robberies has left the Santa Barbara police baffled and the store owners on edge.
He looks at the blonde. Gorgeous. He kisses her again, but somehow, even against his will, his eyes drift back to the screen as they cut to an interview with the rattled store manager. We're at a loss. We don't know what else we can do. It's been a tough few weeks, but hopefully the police can crack this thing for us. She comes in at him again, but he moves his head a little to the right to keep his eye on the screen, watching with a sudden intensity as the store manager is on camera, showing the news crew the break-in site.
The department could use a boost in the wake of the recent recall of their longtime chief.
Taking his head tilt as a cue, the blonde kisses his neck. Sean's eyes suddenly go wide. He leans up from the couch with her still gently nibbling on his ear, grabs the remote, scans back his TiVo briefly, then reaches for the phone.
What are you doing?
He kisses her. Calling the police.
Any particular reason?
I had just solved a crime.
You didn't tell me you're a cop.
Oh, no. Definitely not a cop. Does that disappoint you?
I was just hoping you had handcuffs.
Oh, I have handcuffs. The phone starts to ring. Hello? The other end picks up.
Santa Barbara Police.
It's a store manager. The blonde goes back to kissing his neck.
Pardon me?
The stereo robberies. Manager Joe Torrance runs a State Street location. He's on TV right now. The blonde tickles his ribs. He returns the favor as he listens on the phone. Yes, my name is Sean Spencer. Yes, the same one. Nope, that's it. He bites the blonde's lip and blindly starts to hang up when his eyes catch the screen again. He pulls the phone back as he notices one more thing. Oh, wait a minute, and the tags are also expired on the news van. Completely unrelated. He lets the phone drop to the floor, and we roll credits. All right, so that ends our dramatic reading. But I want to go back and talk a little bit about character wants and needs. And I think that the teaser here does a good job of establishing that Sean needs to grow up and accept more responsibility, but what he wants is to not do that and not have the kind of effect on other people that his dad had on him. And I think that you might have to read between the lines, like as far as like the teaser goes in order to get that. But the rest of the pilot and the show in general does a really good job of establishing that. And like what we read was about 6 pages. And so you have this really interesting character with like an interesting skill, a complex relationship with his father, and there was this expectation that when he was young that he would grow up to be a police officer, but then he doesn't because he doesn't want to be like his dad. And like you have all of that done in 5 or 6 minutes, and I think that is really good and efficient writing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely get a lot from this portrayal in the teaser. I also was, if I can go down a little bit to the portion where he's on the phone, it's interesting that just those very simple back and forths, like sometimes in a phone call, like it doesn't always have to be really interesting, but in that brief exchange, you get to learn that this is something he does routinely enough that they like recognize his name, or he has to say, yeah, that's me again, or something like that, just to kind of give us in a brief moment, this is his MO. And I'm assuming it's like for the reward money or something like that, or
Yeah, because he can't hold down a job, he like uses like these detective skills to cash in on like anonymous tips, which eventually the pilot sets up that like the police suspect that he's actually some kind of like criminal kingpin or something like that, because like he has so much information on all these crimes. And that's why he has to pretend to be a psychic, because like in order to get himself out of trouble. I was tempted to read that scene where like he becomes the psychic detective for the first time, but because we just talked about opening scenes last week, and this technically is also an opening scene, I wanted to show a different way of doing an opening scene, one that is deeply rooted in character.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point about how layered some of these interactions or characters are, even just the way you described that, I was like, that does sound like a con man, except he's like the real deal. So you have this like interesting tension where he is pulling a bit of a con. We have a reason like you're mentioning now, but it just shows more how like these characters seem like they're simple or the things they're doing are really funny, but there's actually a lot going on at the same time. And it makes it like more interesting as a viewer.
Yeah. All right. So there is a lot that we could talk about in terms of like how to construct a good character, probably more than we can fit in one episode. But in terms of like how to introduce a character memorably, I think that this pilot gives us great examples of introducing a character with a unique skill, having them demonstrate that skill, giving them an interesting backstory, because most of what we read was a flashback. Give them a complicated relationship. Give them a very clear want, a very clear need. And was there anything I missed?
I think even just taking small moments and like using those to good effect, like the dialogue of a phone call or even just how he's in the middle of one task, like making out with this person and then trying to look over their shoulder at the TV. Like certain things where like looking at a TV doesn't sound like it would be interesting, but just like the context in which like he's doing it and how he almost can't help it. Like that's, again, a pretty small thing, but it does communicate quite a bit.
It communicates his personality. And so that is another thing that really sells this show, is that Sean's personality is very carefree, easygoing, and fun-loving. And that is deeply rooted in character as well. And so, yeah, this definitely also helps showcase his personality. All right. That concludes our review of the opening scenes of the Psych pilot episode and our brief look at character. Again, we could talk a lot about this, but we're just hitting the highlights here.
And we hope these discussions can help writers of all walks to help diversify the media landscape even more.
Yeah, tune in next week for when we cover a different element that a TV pilot could use to become a successful bingeable story. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Jackie.
And we hope you have a good week.
Take care.
Thanks for listening and stay safe.